Hello again. Now what we are going to be discussing is internationalization within the logic of how do you take advantage of your ability to create value and then extend it to other areas. In this particular case, it's going to be a geographic extension of that ability and the logic also of, yes, it's not only application, but also what can you benefit from expanding abroad. So what are we going to do? What is internationalization? Very simply, expanding the company in different countries. What are the internationalization types? And especially, and this is the important thing, the internationalization process, how do we understand how to select among entry methods? And then how do we understand how to select among countries so that there is eventually a logic of going abroad, transferring advantages, learning, and then bringing those advantages back. And as a result, the company is going to be so much better off because it is a multinational. So let's start with key concepts of internationalization. Internationalization, expanding the company across borders. You are taking the company to other countries. Not very complicated to conceptualize. But the important thing here is that there are two main motives, and this to some extent simplifies some of the discussions that you may have seen newspapers of why do you want to go abroad. Simply put, you want to sell more. You are really good. You have already identified your sources of advantage. You have a competitive advantage, and you want to build on that, benefit from it, and then you're looking for new markets. Hey, this product is fantastic. There are many other customers outside our country. Why don't we go and start selling this particular product or service to them? It's not that complex. The other way, the reverse, and this is important because in some cases we tend to have to some extent too much of a focus on the selling part. The buying part is also really important. The logic is slightly different because instead of trying to just build on your advantage and go abroad, you're going to ask for or look for sources of advantage, location advantage. Hey, in those countries, this raw material in those countries, and there is much better sophisticated skilled labor in those countries. We can access abundant and less expensive sources of capital. Why don't we go there and get those inputs, and then that is going to help us improve our company. So the idea is slightly different. One is going in search of new markets, and I'm exploiting using the sources of advantage, the ability to create value I already control. In the other one, I'm looking for things that other countries have, natural resources, labor, capital, technology, and trying to access that location advantage. Country level story. So different stories underlying the notion of going abroad. With this, internationalization types, different methods of internationalization, going deeper into how do we understand it? Lots of different types. How do you enter another country? Well, you can use trade. Trade is the simplest thing, and this is the important thing to remember. Foreign direct investment, which is the next one, is the one that gets most of the attention because, oh, you're running a multinational, you're operating in multiple countries, isn't it great? Yes, but that is complex. Always start with the simpler way of achieving your objective. You want to sell or you want to buy, sell better and buy better. How can you do it? Well, trade, contracts, move things around. You can export or import products. You're going to be selling or buying from abroad. That's going to make your company access other markets, or you're getting products that happen to have a location advantage embedded in them. Isn't this great? You can also, it's not just the physical products, you can also buy and sell knowledge, license knowledge. So I have this advantage, I have some patents, intellectual property. Why don't I just use this not only by myself, but also license it to others in exchange for a royalty payment? Or, hey, we are lacking this technology, that other company in that country has it, why don't we ask for a license from them? And the notion here is that we are going to be benefiting from the access to other countries, and that is going to help us improve our company, or is going to provide more revenues for the company. This is the knowledge part. Of course, this requires that you can protect your intellectual property. In some cases, there is some limitation here. And then you can also subcontract offshore. Offshore outsourcing is the other term in which I'm not just buying a product or service, or I'm not just buying or selling, licensing. Access to knowledge, but I take a whole activity and somebody is going to be doing that for me, or I do that activity for others. Again, it goes in both ways. So I don't have to maybe get into call centers. I can rely on somebody who is highly specialized in another country. They understand how to do it, and they have a location advantage, so they are going to provide me with the service. Or I can maybe become the company that is doing the activity for others. We have highly specialized lawyers here, so we are going to provide legal services for companies in other countries. The idea here is the whole activity, not just a particular product. All of these benefits and limitations. It's easier to do many of these, especially for trade. Put things in a container, off they go. In some cases, you don't really need to know anything about the foreign country. The other company can take care of all the customs processes. Or you can basically get into licensing knowledge. You create it, you establish it, you understand how to do it, you have a franchise model, and then you start licensing in other countries. You expand very quickly that way. Or you can decide that, well, this activity, we are not experts. Why don't we just focus on what we are really good? And we subcontract not just to a local provider, but a local provider in another country, so that we access the location advantage. Relatively simple. Of course, there are some challenges. Hey, maybe I cannot export or import because this product is too bulky and low value added. So sending it all the way to another country is too complicated. It's not going to be economical, or there are barriers to trade. There are tariffs, so all of a sudden it's not economical to basically export the product or import the product. There might be some government regulations. All of a sudden I cannot do it. Services, you have to provide them in person, so you have to go and expand into the other country. Licensing, similar stories. It's fantastic. I can codify what I do and then give it to somebody else in exchange for payment. But hey, maybe they will take advantage of it. Maybe I'm creating a competitor. It might not be the best idea to do that. In the case of subcontract offshore outsourcing, yes, it's going to be nice that somebody is doing this activity, that, well, maybe that activity is integral to my value chain. Is it going to undermine my ability to continue operating? Am I going to be relying on somebody? Am I going to be losing the contact with important relations? Yes, I send all the wholesaler to another place, but then I don't have direct contact with customers. They are unhappy. Can I basically bring that knowledge back in? There are pros and cons for all of them. But in general, international trade is simpler, faster, less commitment in terms of capital, in terms of time. At the same time, of course, well, there is limited knowledge, limited learning of what is happening there. I may not be able to adapt it well. I'm relying on others. Maybe they are not creating the best image for my product. Maybe I'm not going to be capturing some of that connections with the customers that are really crucial. So there are always pros and cons. And if we look at foreign direct investment, some of the cons of international trade are the basically pros of the others. So the key idea here is, depending on the specifics of what you're trying to achieve and the conditions of the industry and your company, think about different alternative methods. And of course, time change them. So, but for now, international trade, big way to understand process of internationalization, choose among them, or then you can also choose among foreign direct investment. We're investing abroad, we're becoming a multinational, a company that has value-added activities in another country. Usually, the rule of thumb, you control 10% of some company in another nation, and that makes you into a multinational. Within that, three different, if you want, alternatives for foreign direct investment: acquisitions, alliances, and organic, also called greenfield investments. Alliances, why are they good? Well, I have advantages. I have a local collaborator. They understand the market. They have their own advantages. I'm accessing their sources of advantage. Isn't it going to be great? We create a new company, and that way, or we create a relationship, a contract, and that way I'm accessing their abilities, and at the same time, I'm controlling some activities there that give me the exposure to the local market. So this is different from the licensing and subcontracting. I have an operation there. It's great. Joint ventures, fantastic. But yes, I'm going to be dependent on the other company. What if I just want to have more control? Well, let's go and buy a company. Oh, it's going to be fantastic. I'm going to buy an existing company. It has the relationships. Maybe I'm looking for the brand. It has the contacts, the licenses. It's going to be fast. At the same time, of course, the challenges of acquisitions. How much do I pay? Can I recover the premium? What happens in terms of integrating the two companies? They have different cultures. I'm talking about country culture, but I'm talking about corporate culture. How do we make sure that the way we work here can be aligned with the way they work there? And then, of course, there is also the alternative, organic greenfields. No, it's just easier. I have this really sophisticated process. I want to make sure that everything works well. I don't need to depend on others. Let me go and replicate what I'm doing at home in another location. Fantastic. But then you have to learn about that country. You don't have maybe the licenses. Might take longer. You don't have the contact with the customers. You have to build it. Which are the suppliers? You have to establish relationships. It might take longer. It might be complex. So the pros and the cons, again, you have to balance, and it depends on the conditions in which your company is operating, the activities, and what you want to achieve. That you could consider international trade, and then foreign direct investment, or a combination, an alternative, so that you basically achieve your objective, which is successful internationalization. Again, the idea here is if you want to internationalize, it's relatively simple. It's just go and start selling or buying from abroad. The question is, how do you do it more successful? Because you do an analysis of the way in which you can benefit from the operations in other countries. So with this, let's get now into a story of country selection. Before it was entry method selection, we have different alternative modes. Now what we are talking about is different alternative countries. There are lots of them. Which one do we choose? Here is the differences that matter. So this is a framework, case framework. There are lots of differences across countries. Why don't we apply a more analytical approach and then look at differences in culture, differences in administrative, it's basically political systems, geographic and economic distances. And if we mesh all of these things, we might get a better understanding that, yes, it might look dissimilar in culture, but maybe the geographic distance is smaller. It might be the main driver for me to go to that country, or no, actually, what I'm looking for is countries in which there is really similar economic distance or very little economic distance, because this product is for a particular segment, high-end segment, and I need markets that have that high-end segment, and cultural differences are not going to be an issue here. Start thinking about those differences, and here you have two different stories. We were trying to sell more. I have a product. I might look for customers in other places. Here, these differences, distances are problematic. You want to go to countries in which there is little need to adapt that product to the local conditions. Alternatively, well, what I'm looking is not to sell. I'm looking to basically buy. I'm looking for location advantage. So here is an arbitrage story. These differences are so much better. If I am in a high labor cost country, what I'm looking is for a country that has a lower labor cost for highly skilled labor. If I'm in a country in which I have a high cost of financing, I'm looking for a country that has very low cost of financing. I'm looking to arbitrage those differences because these are inputs, this allocation story. So this is the next step, if you want, on the internationalization process of choosing and understanding the pros and cons of all the different entry methods, then understanding the pros and cons of all the different countries based on several conditions: cultural, administrative, geographic, and economic, and how those drive whether I'm going to be looking for a new market, in which distances might be an issue, problematic, or I'm looking to buy from a new market, a country, so it's and buy better, so maybe the distances are going to be good. Within that, and then we get into the underlying logic of assuring success. And this is the other framework. It's a story of the rat and cat test. Back to the analysis of, do I have capabilities? Yes, I'm a good company. Most multinationals are the better companies, not only because they happen to operate in multiple countries and they benefit from selling more and buying better, but also because there is a self-selection. We are the better company. We identify these capabilities, these sources of advantage, these resources. The question is, are these going to be relevant to other locations? Can I bring them there? Is it going to provide me with an advantage there? Am I going to create value and then capture some of the value? Can I have an operation there? And then if I have some of these capabilities, can I transfer them there? So sources of advantage, why am I good? This is great. Is this going to be working in other places? Yeah, it can do. Is this going to be enable me to not only work in the country, but also be better than others? I can capture some of the value, and then can I transfer them across borders? The story of transferability, yes, I have a really good brand. It's going to be great. The perception might be fantastic. I might be better, but people don't know me. Or no, the brand transfers very quickly, very easily. It's not going to be an issue, but I have a really sophisticated production system. It's not going to transfer that well. Well, if I cannot put things in a container and export them, it's going to be a limitation. Thinking about this story, this test of my capability is relevant, they are appropriable, and they are going to be transferable. Once you go to other places, what do? Hey, there's a learning process. So this is the benefit of multinationals. Why multinationals are better? Because they are the better companies that can then transfer those capabilities and have an advantage. And then once you're there, you bring some of the learning back home. So you're going to access all these complementary capabilities. They are going to enable to capture some of the value, appropriable, and then you are going to be able to transfer them back to the home country and integrate them. So it's a virtuous cycle in which I'm better. I decide that I want to go out. I'm going to be able to transfer and make sure that I operate well there, and I'm going to be a successful competitor. Once I'm there, I'm learning new things, and then I'm going to bring them back, which makes me better at home, which then enables me to go to another country, which makes me learn more things, which enables me to improve my home country and their operations. And then you get into why the multinationals are the better companies in comparison to purely domestic firms. So, and that's the story, which and this is a summary of those things: exploit, enhance, and renew. And the story of I have capabilities, I'm going to be using them, I'm going to be improving them, and then I'm going to be renewing them for the future. And then differences across them, strategic objective boundaries, what is best for, and things like this. But the notion here, you can stop the video and then have a look at this. The important thing here is capabilities, transferability, use, and a continuous process of learning so that the company is better. And that's it. What is internationalization? I'm going to another country. To some extent, some of these ideas can be applied within country. So I start in a city, I'm starting to expand into other cities. Can I transfer capabilities? I'm going to learn something. Can I become better? It's a similar story. The main difference is that there are much bigger considerations for differences across countries. It's not the same moving from one city to the other within the same country as moving across borders, because now you have all the legal story and the political and things like this. But nevertheless, the notion here is expansion is going to be good for the company. It can potentially be good. The question is, how do you assure that you are successful in internationalization? Select entry mode that fits. International trade is the simplest one. It is faster. It enables you to get some learning and some exposure. At the same time, it has limitations in terms of you don't have direct access to all the customers, you don't know. You have a presence in the country, and therefore you are not going to be fully understanding what is happening there. Maybe you get into foreign direct investment, which is going to give you the exposure, but it's going to have the complexities. You do have to have more commitment. Capital expenditures and things like this are going to be much bigger, but it does give you the ability to basically embed yourself, adapt your processes, and make sure that the operations work well. And underlying this, the story of understanding those country level differences. Similarities are good if you want to sell more. Similar differences are good if you want to buy better. And then the story of capabilities. Can I improve? And this is a continuous improvement story, which requires me to understand where I am, transfer, make sure that it is appropriate and operates well, and then learn from there and then improve my operations later on. So that's all for now. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.